Have you ever wanted to quit your job and pursue what you love, but it sounded too risky? I thought so too. So in this video, I'm going to break down how having a competitive advantage, doing the boring work, as well as having a safety net are the three things that you need in order to do that well. One of my favorite things in life is soccer. And that means sometimes I spend way too much time watching people talk about soccer cleats on the internet. That could be seen as a waste of time, and sometimes it is, but it actually helped me quit my job. So how does this pile of cleats on the floor, me watching people talk about soccer on YouTube, and you quitting your job all tied together? Well, it comes down to one thing, and that one thing is reselling. But even if you're not interested in reselling at all, these three things are the things that you will need in order to make sure that any risk that you're taking with your hard-earned money is a smart one. You first need a competitive advantage, that thing that you know more about or can do better than anybody you know. Actually, no, not anybody you know, just most people that you know. When I was in high school and playing soccer, I first realized that soccer companies were liquidating their cleats into department stores like Ross, Burlington, and Marshall's. They didn't come around all that often, but when they did, I knew I could pick them up for anywhere from $16 to $25 and then resell them for well over $100. Now that's a competitive advantage for me because that's something that I know that most other people don't. Another competitive advantage that I recently gave myself is that I am now able to shop for 10 to 15 hour days because I quit my job in order to resell professionally and build up a couple different YouTube channels. During those days, I'll go to a bunch of different stores that have things that I'm able to resell. And then a third competitive advantage that I have is that I live in a big city, Orlando, Florida, which has a ton of these stores. My knowledge and nerdiness about soccer cleats, my ability to shop for whole days at a time, as well as living in a big metropolitan area like Orlando, gave me a competitive advantage that allowed me to take a pretty big risk this week that you see pretty much laid out before you. And I know it looks a little excessive, but I bought 22 pairs of soccer cleats over a 2-day period that cost me about $500. These shoes retail from between $230 to $250 to $275. So even though I'm risking about $500 of my money, I'll profit over $2,000 on this deal. And look, I'm sure there are other people who went to Ross on Monday. Some of them maybe even were soccer players. Some were maybe even resellers, but they didn't have the competitive advantages that I have, which allowed me to take advantage of this deal. But I didn't just see that first pair of cleats and immediately stop my normal reselling route and just go to Ross's. I kept going on my route, went to a couple more Ross's, and when I noticed that a couple of them had these cleats, they probably all got the same shipment, so I decided that I was gonna go on the hunt. And that's exactly what you need to do in your business or side hustle in order to grow it, is grow your nerdiness, learn about a lot more things, use your experience and just try some stuff, and then you'll have the competitive advantage to take the risk of those opportunities when you find them. I'll be the first to admit that the fun part about reselling is the buying. Seeing a $275 pair of soccer cleats for a $25 price tag is something that I don't think will ever get old. But right now, this is just a pile of cleats, and it's not really worth a lot more than me lovingly looking at it, which I know is kind of weird. But in order to turn this into actual money, we're gonna have to do the unsexy work of reselling. So the question then becomes, how do you get through and maybe even enjoy the unsexy part of whatever your work is? If anyone is selling you the dream that you will always like the work that you're doing, even if you're working for yourself, they're lying. Even though I'm so much happier working for myself now and doing things that I care about, there's still a lot of boring crap that I have to do, like listing all this on eBay. And my wife will attest, I do not like to do that because normally it doesn't get done for a couple of days. But even though it's boring, I'm still able to value and appreciate it because I'm looking at it through the lens of the bigger picture. What I used to do is go through the whole process for each item. I would get the item, go onto eBay on my phone, make the listing, take the pictures, put the item away, then go on to the next one, over and over and over again. I did that because I was thinking about the next thing to do, not the end goal. So the logical progression of going onto the eBay app and making a listing is taking the pictures and then pricing it and then publishing it. But that's not the best way of doing it. Like anything you do in life, you need to begin with the end in mind, which for me means turning these 22 shoes into about $2,500 of profit. And because I'm starting with the end in mind rather than just thinking about the next task that I have to do, I realized that doing what I did with this pair of shoes for every single one of these would take forever. So what I'm doing now is called batch working. I'm making drafts of each listing before I take any pictures of it. So all 22 of these will have a draft of a listing on eBay, and then I'll go in and take pictures together. That way my pictures will both be more consistent, which will give me a more quality picture, which means that they'll sell faster, but it also means that I'm using my time in the most efficient way. But even if you know that you can get through the boring work and you have a competitive advantage, you're still able to make bad decisions. So we need to go over how you can take good financial risks that will benefit you in the long run. I don't really know of anybody else who would say this, but I love risk, and I personally think that you should take on as much risk as you possibly can while not being dumb. Because the more smart risk that you're able to take on, the more reward and benefit that you'll be able to receive. I personally haven't heard of anybody who's lived either an exceptional or an interesting life who hasn't taken any risks at all. So how do you tell the difference between a smart risk and a dumb one? Here's what I did. My wife and I have $3,400 of expenses per month, and my wife brings home around $2,400 per month, which means that there's a $1,000 gap. My reselling business is currently about $2,000 cash flow negative, which means that I have $2,000 more in debt than I do in the bank. And that debt is on credit cards. On top of that, I quit my $42,000 per year salary job in order to start this reselling business and 3 YouTube channels, and those YouTube channels are also making me $0. And if I was to stop right there, I would really hope that you would click off this video and leave and never come back, because leaving a job where you have a $1,000 surplus per month to start 4 businesses that are making $0 per month doesn't sound like a very smart financial decision on the surface. And obviously what I'm doing is pretty risky, but let me explain why I think it's actually a smart risk decision that I'm making. Remember that $1,000 monthly surplus that I talked about a second ago? Well, that money was used to invest and save while I was still working, and we got our savings account up to $9,000. Now that $9,000, mind you, is beyond our normal emergency fund. Right now we're actually saving it to buy and build out a van so that we can go travel around for a while. But obviously we wouldn't be able to travel if I am not income independent, so we decided, my wife and I, that we would use that $9,000 as the business income emergency fund. So that means that because we have a gap of $1,000 between what my wife makes and what we need in order to live, we can live for 9 months without me bringing in any money from my businesses. But obviously my goal is within that time to replace and even increase my income from what I was making before from my reselling business and my YouTube businesses that hopefully will get off the ground. But you probably rightfully think that having $2,000 in credit card debt is a dumb decision. And in most cases, I would definitely agree with you. But let me explain exactly how I am using that money. Back in August when I started reselling, I opened a Chase Freedom Unlimited credit card because it had a 0% interest on all purchases for 15 months offer. That means that as long as I pay the minimum payments, which I do, I don't have to make any payments beyond my minimums up until December of 2021, and I won't pay any interest. Just like how I tested the waters for buying the cleats by seeing if they were at a couple different stores before I just scrapped my whole day and went and searched for them, I really tested the waters reselling as well. I noticed pretty early on that even though my business was cash flow negative because I had more debt than I had money in the bank, it had the right momentum. Meaning that even though I would keep buying things and increasing my debt on my credit cards, I would keep selling things, but I would sell things at a faster rate than I was buying things. So the net amount of debt that I had was going down. And because I'm a guy who loves spreadsheets, I did some rough estimates and initially thought that I would be cash flow positive by December 9th, but I recently realized it'll probably be closer to January because when I quit, I was able to buy a lot more inventory than I thought I was going to be able to. And on top of that, as a little bit of a bonus, I get credit card points from everything that I'm buying, which equate to about $50 to $100 per month. So the principle here is one that you probably heard a lot if you grew up doing sports, and that is offense wins games, defense wins championships. You can only go so far being blindly aggressive with your finances and just throwing money at the next new opportunity. But if you give yourself a safety net like I have, you can take advantage of high quality but risky opportunities as they come your way. And the better your defense is financially, the more smart risks you'll be able to take on. Because if your maximum risk is less than your safety net, then you don't really have a lot to worry about. That means that you'll be able to take on those risks that you want to, have less stress about doing it, and you'll likely be able to reap those rewards as well, just like quitting your job and pursuing your passions. If you feel like you need help creating that good system that gives you that financial defense, check out my video here. But YouTube thinks you like this one more. Make the wise choice. If you guys are interested in anything that I listed today, check out my eBay store down below, but that's really only if you're interested in soccer. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Let me know any suggestions you have down below, and I appreciate you for hanging out. Bye.